American hospitality is unmatched. I don't know the owner of this boat at all. He just seen my video yesterday and sent me a message saying, I'm heading out tomorrow, do you want to come? I said, sure. You guys don't understand, this is not normal in any other country.
We owe apologies to America because their football stadiums are so much better than ours.
Do you think a country that Europeans have spent decades mocking for its gun laws, its healthcare bills, and its highway food could actually be the one place on Earth that just made half a continent fall in love with it again? Because that's what's happening right now. And if you've been anywhere near football social media since the World Cup, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Stick around, because by the end of this one, you're going to understand why so many Europeans are quietly asking their federations to bring this tournament back to American soil. And if you want more videos like this one, breaking down the real cultural story behind the headlines, go ahead and hit subscribe now so you don't miss the next one.
You know why I feel so happy in the US? I can express myself in every aspect. The way I speak, the way I dress, the way I walk.
My ancestors will not like me for saying this, but there are things America does that are better than the UK.
This is the United States of America. We are in Florida, Miami, and look how beautiful this place is.
Here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud in the European press. For years, the narrative was simple. America is loud, America is unhealthy, America doesn't understand football, America doesn't understand hospitality the way Europe does. And then thousands of European fans actually showed up, not as tourists on a curated 10-day package tour, but as football pilgrims, dragging suitcases through unfamiliar cities, relying on strangers for directions, for rides, for a place to charge a phone before kickoff. And that's where the story actually starts, because it's in those small, unscripted moments, not the ones in the brochures, that a country reveals what it's really like. Take the moment that's been floating around fan forums for weeks now. A group of traveling supporters, exhausted after a delayed connection, short on cash after an unplanned hotel change, ends up at a diner somewhere off the interstate. The story goes that another table quietly picks up the check before anyone even notices, and the group is left trying to figure out who did it and why. It's a small thing. It's also the kind of thing that keeps circulating, because it doesn't match the story people were told before they landed. A second version of the same theme keeps showing up too. A highway patrol officer near a stadium, waving fans through with directions and a joke, instead of the stern, intimidating encounter some travelers braced themselves for. And then, there's the one about a family who, noticing a stranded group of visitors squinting at a rideshare app with no signal, simply offered to drive them themselves. None of these are headline news. That's exactly the point. They're the texture of a place. And that texture is what tends to survive the trip home and turn into a story someone tells for years.
Yeah.
This looks insane.
Hey, you never had this.
I got the same. I got a bit of egg with it.
No, just do the biscuits and gravy. That's like the classic.
Okay.
Would you rather have a vacation full of postcard landmarks or one full of stories like that, the kind that don't show up in any guidebook but are the only thing you actually remember a decade later? Contrast that with what a lot of European visitors say they're used to at home. Warmth that exists, but that has to be earned, layered under a thicker shell of formality and personal space. It's not a criticism of Europe so much as a difference in social operating systems. One environment defaults to reserved until proven otherwise. The other defaults to friendly until given a reason not to be. Neither is objectively correct. But when you've been told your whole life to expect the cold, guarded version of the second country, and you get the warm version instead, it recalibrates something. Then there's scale, and this is where a lot of European travelers say their brains just short-circuit a little. Someone raised on a compact city grid corner shops, and a fridge that holds maybe 3 days of groceries walks into an American supermarket and describes something closer to sensory overload than shopping. Aisle after aisle, refrigerated sections the length of a city block back home. Cereal walls, drink walls, a produce section that looks like it's stocking a small country. It's not that Europe lacks abundance, it's that the presentation of abundance is completely different, and the psychological effect of walking into that kind of scale for the first time is something a lot of first-time visitors say they weren't prepared for. The same reaction shows up at gas stations, especially the mega travel plaza kind that function more like a small mall than a fuel stop. Food counters, walls of snacks, restrooms clean enough to surprise people who'd been warned otherwise. It shows up on the highway system too, where a European driver used to tight, older roads suddenly finds themselves on 10 lanes of smooth interstate, stretching toward a horizon that doesn't end. And it shows up at the stadiums themselves, built on a scale that dwarfs most European football grounds, with concourses wide enough to move tens of thousands of people without the crush familiar from older European stadiums. Would you rather live somewhere cozy and walkable, or somewhere so big that a single road trip can eat an entire vacation and still not get you across the state?
Why do I need to know the waitress' name? Are we going to dinner with her tonight or something?
This is what you guys eat instead of beans on toast for breakfast?
Yep.
Everyone talks shit about the World Cup in America and Canada. This is something we don't really have in Europe.
Because that's the other thing that breaks European brains a little. The sheer size of the geography itself. A visitor who's used to crossing 3 countries in the time it takes to drive across one American state starts to understand, maybe for the first time, why Americans think about distance so differently. National parks the size of small European nations, time zones that mean a phone call to a friend still in Europe requires actual math. Landscapes desert, mountain, coastline, plains that shift entirely within a single day's drive, in a way that no single European country can replicate on its own. It's less that Europe is small. It's that most Europeans have never had a reason to feel the true size of a country until they're standing in the middle of one that refuses to end. Safety is the trickier one, because it's the topic most loaded with preconceived narrative. A lot of visitors arrive having absorbed a very specific, headline-driven picture of American danger. And what a surprising number of them report instead is something closer to normal city life: visible police presence around event zones, crowd management that, at least around the tournament, felt more organized than expected, and everyday interactions with law enforcement that were closer to friendly than frightening. That doesn't erase the real and serious conversations happening in the US about crime and gun violence. Those are real, documented issues. And this isn't the video that pretends otherwise. But it does explain why so many visitors leave saying their lived experience didn't match the warning they were given before they left home, especially in the tourist-heavy, event-heavy environment a World Cup creates. Money is where the story gets more complicated and more human. Ask any traveling fan and you'll hear 2 contradictory things in the same breath. American wages, for the right job, can look enormous compared to back home, and American costs, especially healthcare and housing, can look terrifying for the exact same reason. One traveler's now viral anecdote about a part-time stadium vendor describing a paycheck that would be a strong monthly salary back in parts of Europe gets repeated a lot, right alongside the follow-up detail that a single unplanned hospital visit could wipe that same paycheck out several times over. Both things are true at once, and that contradiction is honestly one of the most interesting parts of the whole cultural exchange, a system that can make you rich fast and also break you fast, depending entirely on what happens to you.
Quick question to all of my American friends, maybe particularly people that live in New York. Why do your drains smoke? I'm so confused. Just look at this. I just don't understand.
Would you rather have a system that pays more but insures you less? Or one that pays less but insures you completely, and be honest about which one you'd actually choose if it were your own money on the line? And then, there's the thing that seems to catch nearly every European visitor off guard the most: the sheer, unembarrassed visibility of patriotism. Flags on porches in quiet residential neighborhoods that have nothing to do with the tournament at all. A national anthem sung, apparently without irony, by strangers in a stadium parking lot before a match that isn't even the national team's own game. Small towns near host cities decorating entire main streets for a tournament most of the world assumed America wouldn't care about. For a lot of European visitors, raised in cultures where overt nationalism can carry uncomfortable historical weight, this kind of loud, casual pride is genuinely disorienting at first. And then, according to a surprising number of the stories circulating, strangely moving by the end of the trip, it's not that Europe lacks pride. It's that American pride is worn on the outside, loudly, constantly, without the self-consciousness a lot of Europeans have been trained into. Food culture rounds the whole thing out, and it's maybe the most immediately relatable part of the story for anyone who's ever traveled anywhere. Portion sizes that visitors describe as built for 2 people and served to 1. The drive-thru as an entire cultural institution rather than an occasional convenience. Tipping culture that trips up almost every first-time visitor, confusing and slightly anxiety-inducing until someone explains the actual math behind why service workers depend on it the way they do. Regional food identity that surprised a lot of visitors who expected one flat American food, and instead found completely different culinary personalities from city to city, host to host, barbecue region to barbecue region. It's a small thing next to flags in stadiums and highways, but it's often the detail that shows up first in a returning traveler's photos, and first in the stories they tell their friends back home. So here's where it all lands. A lot of these visitors came in with a script already written for them. The danger, the excess, the shallow patriotism, the exhausting scale of everything. And what a surprising number of them describe instead is something closer to an apology tour on social media, admitting, often half-jokingly, that they'd been wrong, or at least incomplete, in what they expected. Not that every stereotype was false. Some of the harder truths about cost of living, healthcare, and safety in specific places are real and worth taking seriously. But that the lived ground-level experience of a World Cup in America turned out to be warmer, bigger, and more complicated than the flattened version most of them grew up hearing. So here's the real question, the one worth sitting with after all of this. Would you rather live in a place that's smaller, safer on paper, and more reserved, or one that's louder, bigger, riskier in places, and somehow still manages to make strangers feel like they belong the moment they land? There's no wrong answer, but if you've made it this far, you clearly want to keep thinking about it. So go ahead and like this video, share it with someone who still has the old stereotype stuck in their head, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications, because this series isn't done yet. Before we go, one honest note. This video is a narrative synthesis, my own commentary and analysis, built around widely circulating traveler stories, social media reactions, and general public perception around the World Cup, rather than a piece of verified journalism. Names, specific figures, and individual anecdotes described here are illustrative composites of the kind of stories that have been circulating, not verified direct quotes or confirmed reporting on any single named person. It isn't meant to represent the complete social reality, policy, or statistics of any country, and it isn't a substitute for real reporting, official data, or your own research. Take it as one perspective in a much bigger conversation, not the final word on it.